My dear comrades, Manal Ramadan, and all the organizers who have worked so hard to make this evening the undoubted success for the Palestine Children's Fund that it is and is going to be, distinguished elders, distinguished Vice Chancellor of the University, brothers and sisters, comrades and friends, wassalamu alaikum, peace be on all of you. I'm really overwhelmed by the warmth of the reception and stunned at the efficacy of YouTube. I was in the, what you people quaintly call the restroom, although why one would want to rest in it. As Oscar Wilde said, we truly are two people divided by a common language. But when I was in the restroom a moment or two ago, I actually heard someone in my accent reciting an interview I did during the Lebanon War with a stupid woman from Sky News. It's clear many of you have seen that interview, so I should tell you the postscript. About a year after it, I went back to the Sky News studio to review the next morning's newspapers, and who was in the chair but that preposterous and she said, "You've made me famous all over the world." Her only complaint was that I had said that her bias was obvious in every nuance of her voice and every line on her face. She looked me straight in the eye and said, "Mr. Galloway, I have no lines on my face." And I have to confess that she was right. This building is the Paul Robeson building. Paul Robeson was one of the greatest men who ever lived. He was a tower of strength and principle and a man of genius, whose voice as a singer and as an advocate for the poor and the oppressed rings out through the ages. And about 50 years ago, he was banned from entering Canada. He was banned from entering Canada not by Ottawa but by Washington, which had taken away his passport in the interests of freedom and liberty, you understand. And so, Paul Robeson addressed an audience of thousands in Vancouver, singing Old Man River down a telephone line amplified into the auditorium. So I say to the Government of Canada from this great university, if next Monday I'm turned away from the borders of your beautiful country, the technology now exists not just to sing down a telephone line, but on live television to address an audience 10 times larger than it would have been if you hadn't tried to stop me coming in. And I'm saying this in the United States of America. I told an interviewer from Canadian Broadcasting earlier today, you can be more royal than the king. You can even be more Catholic than the Pope. But you can't be more anti-terrorist than the United States Homeland Security. And the fact that I'm here addressing audiences, large audiences, all over the United States, over the next 10 to 12 days, is an indication that a wind of change is blowing here in the United States, and that wind of change is filled with hope for all of us around the world. And that your government in Canada, by contrast, is the last redoubt of the dead-end, has-been, neocon, Bush years, and you will be swept away soon by the electorate in Canada. In fact, I must tell you that, you know, they say the RCMP, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they always get their man. Well, I always get my man too. Ask ex-Senator Norm Coleman. And tonight they told me on the Canadian television that there's speculation. I know this is hard to believe. I can hardly believe it myself. There's speculation that this affair may bring down the right-wing government in Canada. Now, I'm very honored to be here, not just because of all the nice things that have been said, not even because of the wonderful music and words that we've enjoyed this evening, outstanding though it was, but because these envelopes on your table must fill. They must fill with every piece of folding paper that you can afford and more. Because the story I'm going to tell you this evening is fresh, or rather rancid, from the front. For I have just been, as many of you know, in Gaza. And the situation there is bleaker than you can imagine. The devastation of the 22-day war, if we can dignify it with the description war, it was an episode unique in history where those who locked the only doors out of the most densely populated piece of earth on the planet then rained down death and destruction on the people they'd locked in to this tiny area. There is no other conflict in which that has ever happened. In every other war, the people can flee as refugees, but those who controlled the gates were the same people who killed and maimed and orphaned thousands of people in those 22 days.